Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're diving into what is basically a David versus Goliath story for any business operating in the European Union. It's all about what happens when a government authority makes a mistake that costs you serious money, and it really forces us to ask one simple but incredibly powerful question.
I mean, really think about that for a second. An authority makes an error. They hold on to your cash for, say, a few years, and then they finally admit they were wrong and just give you the original amount back? Is that fair? What about all the lost opportunities, all the time that money could have been invested or used to grow your business? That is the exact issue right at the heart of our explainer today.
Okay, so to get into this, let's meet the three main players in our story. They're all German companies, but they could not be more different in what they do. And yet, they all found themselves locked in the exact same fight against customs authorities over the exact same principle. All right, so first up, you've got Grafendorfer. They're in the poultry business, and they were told their chickens just weren't good enough for an export refund, and they got fined. Then there's Reher, an importer of nuts and bolts, who suddenly got slapped with huge anti-dumping duties because the authorities made a mistake about where their products came from. And finally, we have Flexi, who makes parts for dog leashes, and they got overcharged on import duties because of a simple product misclassification. So we've got chickens, fasteners, and dog leash hooks. Three totally different worlds, but with one single unifying problem. A government body made a mistake based on EU rules, and it cost these companies a lot of money. So after years of back and forth, letters, legal challenges, the authorities finally caved. They admitted they were wrong, Grafendorfer got its refund, Reher got its duties back, Flexi was reimbursed. Great, right? Well, not quite. For all of them, years had passed. They'd been out of pocket for huge sums of cash, which naturally led them to ask a pretty important follow-up question.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. You've got these three completely separate cases. I mean, we're talking about poultry, steel bolts, and dog leash parts. And they all get bundled together and sent all the way up to the highest court in the entire European Union, the European Court of Justice.
And that's the whole point, because despite the massive differences in what they do every day, the core legal principle they were fighting for was 100% identical. All of their individual, messy fights boiled down to one single fundamental question about fairness and the rule of law in the EU.
And this was the multi-million-dollar question. It wasn't just about whether they should get some interest. No, it was about getting interest for the entire period, from the very second the money was wrongly taken, right up until the day it was finally back in their bank account. See, German law at the time said, well, maybe you get interest, but only from the day you file a lawsuit. But these companies were arguing no way. They believed EU law should guarantee full compensation from day one.
So everything hinged on what the court was going to say. And its answer, well, it was a total game changer. It came down as this super clear three-part ruling that really strengthens the rights of individuals and businesses when they're dealing with the government right across the entire EU. But hang on, before we get to the actual ruling, the court needed to clarify something really important. What exactly counts as a breach of EU law? And this is so key. A breach doesn't have to be some big, malicious scandal. It can be a simple, honest-to-goodness mistake. An official misinterpreting a rule, making a factual error about where a product came from, or misclassifying a bolt hook. That's it. That's enough to be considered a breach. Okay, so let's walk through the ruling itself. First, the court said this right to compensation is super broad. It covers Grafendorfer's late refund and their penalty, just as much as it covers the duties paid by Reher and Flexi. It's all the same principle. Second, just as we said, a simple mistake is enough to trigger this right. The authorities didn't have to be using some illegal EU law. They just had to apply a perfectly valid one incorrectly. And third, and this is the real knockout punch, national laws cannot stand in the way. The court was crystal clear. A country's local rules can't make it basically impossible to get full compensation. And that means interest has to cover the entire period, from the moment of payment to the moment of repayment. That restrictive German law? Overruled.
And this is exactly why this case is such a huge deal. This isn't just about chickens and bolts and dog leashes anymore. This ruling sets an incredibly powerful precedent for literally any business that deals with customs or tax authorities in any of the 27 EU member states.
The court's own words really say it all. The whole point of paying interest isn't to punish the government for messing up. It's about basic fairness. It is simply to compensate the business for losing the use of their own money. It's about making that company whole again, putting them back in the financial position they would have been in if the mistake had never happened in the first place.
So what's the bottom line for businesses? What are the big takeaways here? First, your rights are way stronger than you might think. This ruling confirms you have a right to be fully compensated. Second, that phrase, full compensation, isn't just talk. It means interest for the entire time you were without your money. Third, this puts national governments on notice. Your local rules can't be used to shortchange people on what they're owed under EU law. And finally, just remember how broad this is. It applies across the board, to duties, penalties, refunds, you name it.
This ruling really cements that powerful principle of making a person or a business whole again after a government screws up. And it leaves us with a much bigger question to chew on, doesn't it? If we agree this is fair for financial disputes, where else should this principle apply? In what other areas of life should this idea of not just fixing a mistake but fully compensating for the damage it caused be a fundamental, undeniable right?